Hello everybody. Today we are going to be looking at a very simple knife, but a very practical knife. It's a knife that might seem familiar to a lot of people because the only way to really explain the knife or to define the knife would be that it's a classic, simple, conservative knife. A lot of people might remember their grandpas carrying a knife similar to this one. This is an 087 Stockman from Case. An 087 Stockman. They also make this in a penknife and a jackknife. I don't have the jackknife version, but I do have the penknife version. You can see that this is the same frame. The penknife version will have two blades, just like that. And this is a 95. But the one we're going to be talking about today is going to be the Stockman version, which is going to have three blades. And this particular one is a 2000. This knife itself, if you want to measure the length on it, it's just around 3 1/4 inches long or so. Around 3 1/4 long. Right about at it. Your main blade, which is usually the only blade that I pay much attention to lengthwise, because you've got shorter blades if you want to use them, if you don't need the long one. But the long blade here, if you measure its length, you can see there that it's coming in just about at 2 1/4. Right about that. If you're looking at the cutting edge itself, it's just a speck shy of that. Here you can see the Tang stamp. It's a 2000 model. Your secondary blade is going to be a spade blade, which is kind of unique for Stockmans. Generally, you'll have a sheep's foot blade for your secondary blade. Usually, if a Stockman has a spade blade, it's going to be the third blade, but that's an exception on this particular Stockman. It's the secondary blade. There you can see the number, if I can get it to focus good. 63087. 6 is letting us know that this knife has brown Delrin handles. It's a good looking brown. This is a tough material. This is a super tough material that you see used quite often. You'll see older knives with this on them, and they hold up extremely well. I believe it's a little bit stronger than the yellow synthetic. And the only reason I say that is seeing used knives, it seems like the ones with this brown Delrin hold up really well. It's good at resisting staining, and it feels good in the hand. Gives a good texture, but it's still nice and pretty smooth. It's a good material, especially if you're looking for a work knife. The 3 is referring to the fact that there's a 3 blade. For instance, the penknife version is going to have a 2 there instead of a 3. 63087. The 087 again is going to be the frame here itself. This is a unique looking little spade blade. It has a pretty sharp angle, and it has more of a point than most spade blades, so you'll be able to pierce pretty good with this little blade. The truth is, it'll probably work about like a spear point blade, or about like a pen blade. To illustrate this, I'll show this canoe. A lot of people like the canoe, and that's the pen blade on a canoe. If you look at the tips there, you can see that the canoe has a little more tip, but it doesn't have a lot more tip. There's a pretty good tip on this spade blade. That'll be even more drastic if we compare it to this spear point blade. You can see this spade really has, I think, about the same amount of tip. It's shaped a little different. The tip is riding higher on the blade, but it's still got a really good tip for a spade blade. So if spade blades bother you, this Stockman might be the Stockman for you. And then your third blade is going to be a little pen blade here. You can see the stainless steel SS stamped on it. This is a good little pen blade. It does have a curvature on the knife, more so than the other Stockmans. It's almost similar to the way that a sow belly curves out. The sow belly is known for that. The sow belly is going to have a spade blade as the third blade. instead of a pin blade. But you see how this sow belly has a large curvature? So when you hold it in your hand, your blade's going to really be facing down. This little 87 pattern does the exact same thing. See, it's got the same shape as a sow belly in that regard. Not near as extreme, but it's still there. So when you hold this knife, that little blade is going to be facing down. So I find that interesting. It's a unique quality of the 087 pattern. You'll also notice that since this one is brown Delrin, it is going to have as ground blades. And what that is Case does not mirror polish these blades. They leave them just a little rougher, and they have more of a satin finish on them. See if I can get that to pick up good. Can you see how you kind of have some sanding and grinding marks on there? There you go, you can kind of see them on the blade. Kind of hides scratches a little better and so on. But the brown-handled knives, the blade is as ground, like that. Much in the same way that if you've had any of the full-size folding hunters, these also have an as-ground blade. See how you can see it's not a mirror polish. You can see some machining marks. Well, this little Stockman is going to be the same way. The Buck 110 is done the same way. It's not highly polished, not the regular Buck 110 anyway. At least not the ones that I have. But this, more than anything, is going to get compared to Case's other medium Stockmans. So let's compare it to a few. I'll open the main blade on them when I compare. First one here is the little 44 pattern Stockman, which I really like. They're about the same length, only difference being that this is a round bolstered Stockman and this one's a square bolstered Stockman. Also, the 44 is not going to have the secondary spay. It's going to have a sheep's foot, or some people might call this one a ram's foot. And then it's going to also have the pin blade. So that's how it compares to the 44. The next one that it might get compared to is the 032 pattern. Again, this is another square bolster medium Stockman, and it's a bigger knife. The main blade's longer, the handle's longer, and it's also a square bolster. It again is going to have the sheep's foot as your secondary, and it's going to have the pin blade as your third blade. But it's going to be bigger in every respect. But the one it's going to get compared to the most is the 18 pattern. The 18 pattern is one of my favorite Stockmans. And it's got really the same shape overall as the 87. But you can see the 87 is simply a shorter knife. The blade's not as long, and the handle is not as long. It's simply a smaller Stockman. Same tail as with the others. The 18 pattern is going to have your sheep's foot for your secondary instead of the spade blade like this 87. And it's going to have a spade blade for the third instead of the pin blade like the 87. So overall, these are a lot different knives. But that is how that it compares to the other common Stockmans out there. There's other Stockmans Case makes, but they're farther apart size-wise, not as easy to get confused. A few other knives that people might know or be aware of might be the full-size Trapper. You can see it's a whole lot smaller than the full-size Trapper there. This is the 54 pattern from Case. The ever-popular Sodbuster Jr. You can see it's a lot smaller than a Sodbuster Jr. But it's not too small. It's a good size. I know people who carry these, and you can get a good grip on them, but they're not too big or heavy in your pocket. They're a good little knife. We'll compare it also to the Mini Trapper. The Mini Trapper is going to be bigger. And when it comes down to it, this little knife, it's a good Stockman, a good everyday carry. I will say that up until this year, Case hasn't made a lot of these in the last 3 or 4 years. And almost the only one I could find was this brown Delrin. I traded for this one. I traded a slimline Trapper for it, a brown Delrin slimline Trapper. But I couldn't find a new one. You couldn't get them in bone there for a long time. But now they're starting to bring them back into production in bone from what I understand, in the last bit of 2024. So hopefully in 2025 we'll have more of these coming out with good bone handles. But yeah, if you see one of these, this is a great work knife. This is a user. Something somebody can carry and get a lot of use out of. Fit in your pocket well. You may notice I do have a cut on my finger there, and I've got a lot of cardboard shavings here on my little towel, and that's because I did a cut test, testing 3 different steels. I tested Case's new stainless steel, the one from 2024. I tested their new CS, their new carbon steel, the 1095, and I also tested a Swiss Army knife, a Victorinox. I was wanting to see how the metals would compare to each other, because Case has switched around their metal a little bit lately, and I can tell when I'm sharpening a knife. I could tell you if it's an older knife or a newer knife compared on how it sharpens. And so stay tuned for that video. I'll put up a video, and the results will be kind of shocking on that. It did not turn out how most people would expect it to. The Swiss Army knife, the stainless steel case, and the carbon steel case. But that's for another video. But to end it out, end this video out, the 87 is a good knife. It would be a good one. You get a lot of use out of it. Very practical knife. Very conservative. Well, lastly, compare it to the Peanut. This Peanut seems to be a rather conservative knife also. Got a nice cross on it there, and you can see that's how they compare size-wise. They rather have a similar shape, in my opinion. The jackknife versions of these 87s that are two-bladed have the same configuration as the Peanut, with a main clip blade and a secondary pin blade, and they look very similar. But this one being the Stockman version, it's going to have the pin blade on the other end of the knife, and you're going to have your spade blade as the secondary blade. And so that's that little knife there. Y'all comment down below, do you have any of these 87 Stockmans? Are you planning on getting one? What do you think of the brown Delrin handles and the as-ground blades? Comment down below what you think about it. And also, comment how you think that the cut test went. It'll be very interesting when I post the video on it. It's shocking. Y'all have a good day and keep your knives sharp.